I'm a filmmaker and a storyteller, so I'm really interested in how an audience absorb thoughts, take on board ideas, but most of all, about how they are moved emotionally. That's my currency. But it should be of interest to you too, when you're trying to emotionally inspire your audience, your team, get them to focus on your agenda and to make a change in their thoughts, ideas and behaviours. Let's go back in time for a moment to the birth of cinema, when the form was simpler. In these early days, the length of a film was limited by what would physically fit onto a single reel. That's only 15 minutes maximum. Now Chaplin was asked to produce a longer film, something new for audiences, yet he knew that other filmmakers who had tried to produce these longer films had all failed because the reaction of the audience was boredom. His solution, as in this early two-reeler The Immigrant, was simple. It's one story, but in two distinct parts. The first part shows the tramp's journey to America. It's inspirational, it's got an uplifting feel. And then there's a real change. And it's coming up soon. So that the projectionist would know it was about to happen, they punched tiny holes in the film. One at 6 seconds and one at 3. And there you can actually see where the two reels have been glued together. Then in the second reel, it changes emotional tone. We've now got the tramp's comedic adventures in a restaurant after he's reached New York. So it's not two different films here. It's the same characters, it's the tramp and the girl, but it's two sequences, two reels, with that real change in between. These films, these Chaplin two-reelers, were immensely successful financially, and they finally opened up the possibility of longer stories that would hold an audience's attention by using the real change to shift emotional gear. And while technology's changed, the audience hasn't changed. Studies still show that people shuffle in their seats every 10 to 15 minutes. So as filmmakers, we use that, we work with that. We create elements of about that duration. The part with a chase, and then the part where they go to a cafe, and then the scene with the crop duster. Bringing it right up to date, I was recently commissioned to write some missions for a new PC game called APB. What we found there was almost the same thing. Missions that were longer than 15 minutes and the players got bored, but missions that were shorter than 15 minutes seemed unsatisfying in some way. But when you've got missions of about 15 minutes, with a real change in between, then people will play continuously for hours. And the more that I looked at this real change idea, the more I found it to be universally true. When the B-49 was launched by the Americans in World War II, it could fly further and higher than anything previously. So the limiting factor now was the guys inside it. Research by the Air Force showed that the bombardiers couldn't concentrate at peak efficiency for longer than 20 minutes, at the absolute maximum. Any longer than that, and their attention rapidly dropped, even under threat of court-martial. But give the crew a break, a real change of some description, and they could continue on. Once you know about the real change idea, you see it everywhere, in education, in religious services, in TV ad breaks.
Friends, go in to see your DeSoto Plymouth dealer tomorrow. And when you do, tell him Groucho sent you.
So, why then? Why? And this is the big question. Why are most meetings, most conference calls, most one-to-ones not like this? Why are they a solid hour with no real change? Why do we waste time and effort trying to break this human trait? This quarter of an hour attention span isn't even a psychological feature, it's physiological. So instead, split an hour meeting into 4 reels, get your heads down and intensely look at the figures for 15 minutes. After that, have a real change, and perhaps for the next 15 minutes, have an upbeat and lively discussion about future plans and what those figures highlight. Some people say that they can't do this, that they have too big a topic to cover. Every year, at the TED conference, people who are out to change the world get 15 minutes, whoever they are, to talk about their big idea. Here's what they cover in that time.
Questions like what is worth living for, what is worth dying for, what constitutes a good life.
What can you do about the climate crisis?
The adults of the last 4 generations have blessed our children with the destiny of a shorter lifespan than their own parents.
This is the first self-replicating species that we've had on the planet whose parent is a computer.
Britain will starve without genetically modified crops.
In other words, they thought their differences were more important than their common humanity. It is the central psychological plague of humankind in the 21st century.
I invented the World Wide Web. Now, 20 years on, I want you to put your data on the web.
I'm quite optimistic that we will be able to eradicate malaria.
But was there anything before the Big Bang? If not, what created the universe?
That's what they can cover in 15 minutes. So what on earth are you saying that would need a solid, uninterrupted hour? Just remember what Chaplin did. Make a real change.